Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host, Taylor, and today is going to be a little bit of a little catch-up episode where we're going to answer some emails today here with the lovely co-host, Kitt Bender.
My favorite part of the beginning of every episode is whatever descriptor you're going to choose today. And today I got lovely, and that's good. I'll take lovely. It's good to be here. I feel like it's been a minute, but it's good to be back.
And I feel like every time I say your name, too, I do it like I'm this like radio host, like a radio DJ.
Well, Kitt Bender has a certain roll off the tongue to it.
It does. It does.
It's good.
Yeah, that's what I feel every time I'm like, Kitt Bender. But we're gonna go over some emails from you guys. You guys have, over the almost year of doing this, have sent so many emails with questions and topic suggestions, which have helped to, figure out what we should talk about and what's going to be helpful for you guys. All of those have been sent to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. So feel free to keep on sending us stuff. And a little fun update with the pod. I posted this on my Instagram at Tamoka, but have not talked about it on the pod yet. And it's like very exciting.
Congratulations are in order. Is that what it is?
I guess so. So Seattle Refined does a Northwest Awards, and someone nominated the podcast for Best Local Podcast, and a bunch of people voted, and Let's Talk About It won Best Local Podcast in the Seattle area.
That is so awesome. Congratulations.
So super exciting. And yeah, a lot of hard work has gone into all of this. And it's really crazy to think like how many people listen and how many people like actually take things away. And it made me like reflect back to like the very beginning and even like before even deciding to do it, like of being so terrified to like start that journey, of like, oh my God, am I really going to do a podcast? Like,
I like looking back at that too. We like created it basically in your parents' basement.
Yeah.
And like recorded that theme and everything.
We had a little jingle that we never shared with you guys.
Okay. You guys need to know that the first version of the jingle at the beginning actually had us both singing on it.
Yep.
And you made me like go to the other room so you could record it. And I think it sounded great. And maybe someday we should redo it with our singing. But it didn't make the final cut. We stuck with just the acoustic. But that was one of the ideas, was us both singing at the beginning.
So let us know if you do actually want to hear a little Let's Talk About It jingle.
Oh, yeah. We could do a special presentation of that somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure it's on my computer somewhere.
Definitely is. Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. It was quite cheesy, but
cheesy.
Starting off like a new adventure, it was kind of cool to do a fun little jingle like that, just to like get excited about it. Because I mean, for me, it was like super terrifying. I remember being like, if just one person, listens, like I don't really think anyone's going to listen or like care, but if just one person listens and like finds something helpful, then like I've done my job, and like that's why I'd want to do this, and that's where like going and reading all the reviews on iTunes like blows my mind and is just like reaffirming that like, yeah, I should keep doing this.
Yeah.
Like this is helpful.
Episode 52? 51. Getting close?
52.
That's a year.
Episode 52. Yeah. I think a year is like 55, maybe.
Well, there's 52 weeks in a year.
Are there?
Technically.
I'm really bad at math. So is this a year episode?
So this would be the 1 year.
No way.
Episode. Or at least, really close to it.
Holy
end of November.
Frickin' moly.
Because we had just a couple that we'd put out right before Christmas last year.
Oh my God. Wait, so is this really a 1 year episode and I didn't even realize it?
I think it is. Happy one. Maybe not 1 year to the date, but at least 1 year's worth of episodes. This is this caps 1 year.
Wow.
That's
well,
awesome.
Then it makes sense that we're going to interact with you guys.
Double congratulations then. Getting a year through and in just 1 year already winning Best Local Podcast.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
That's really crazy. Feels good to give back to Seattle community and to give back to, all of you guys all over the place. So yeah, I guess it's very fitting that we're going to answer some of your questions today. And I mean, again, going back to thinking about the beginning of this, like being so organized and being so like, you know, minute by minute of like what we were going to talk about and all that, to now literally like the day before, which is late, recording the episode with just like, what should we talk about?
Right.
Okay, let's just see where it goes and see what kind of conversation we have. And that was kind of like my whole idea with wanting to start the pod in the first place, was like, let's talk about it. Like, I have these great conversations with these different people in my life and would love to just share those with other people in a very like authentic way. And, you know, while I think some of the organizing obviously is needed and can be super helpful, but also just being like, okay, let's see how deep we can go in this conversation has been like kind of the fun in it. Maybe not fun for you, but leaning into the uncertainty, leaning into the discomfort.
It definitely has become more of an interview-based podcast where you're taking, because with all your traveling, all these awesome people that you're meeting, being able to just pick their brain and get into a conversation with them. It's a little different than we originally started. We started more topic based, and we kind of outline the topic. But it's fun to see how it's evolved over a year, and I'm curious to see what it'll keep doing. But it's awesome.
We shall see. And so I guess second kind of little update. It was just Thanksgiving. We just had the holiday, and we actually spent that together.
We did.
Woo woo for chosen family.
It was, I mean, up until the very end, it was great. And then I like injured a child accidentally, and it was not, I mean, I felt really, really bad.
You did.
I injured a child. I was playing, and I played too rough, and things got out of. No permanent damage done. It was more dramatic than anything, but enough that
it was the end of a sugar high. So it was a bit dramatic. But yeah, we had Thanksgiving with Rob, who was on the biracial episode, and we'll probably come on another episode again soon. So yeah, I had Thanksgiving with him and all kinds of like chosen family. But I know holidays sometimes are like a very stressful time for people, and you know, seeing family can be really stressful. Even just like taking that break from work. And I know for me, it was like a very important time to remind myself, like, to give yourself time to rest and like not having that judgment of myself of like, well, I'm not doing work. Like, it's the day after Thanksgiving. Like, I should get back to doing work, you know?
Right.
And like shaming myself in a way and of being like, Taylor, like, chill out, girl. Like, it's okay. Like, give yourself this day.
Right.
I don't know. It's like a weird like work-life balance, you know?
That we're always trying to find. But holidays are an interesting time for us to do it because it almost demands that we give ourselves a little more.
Yeah.
But then also there's more things to do. And so just extracurricular activities often add up on top of our normal things. So it's a lot. But
like feeling pressured like to do things, all the shoulds. I think like holidays is a particular time where like the boxes really come out. All kinds of boxes, not even just gift boxes. If you've listened to the pod over the last year, you know that Kit and I frequently go back to talking about boxes.
We talk a lot about boxes, yeah.
But, right, wouldn't you say like holidays, like that's a like really particular time where like I think we're shitting ourselves. Maybe in more than one way.
We're shitting ourselves, meaning we're how are you thinking of that in the boxes? Like we're creating expectations for ourselves?
Yeah. Like I think, I mean, I can even think like my mom, you know, like I know when holidays time comes around, like especially when I was little, you know, of like wanting to make sure that I got all the gifts that I wanted and wanting to make sure that like our Thanksgiving was like the cutest, like, you know, most beautiful Thanksgiving dinner that we could share and like on social media and just all this stuff, you know, and wanting to make sure everything's perfect for all the guests when they come over, that the house has to be really clean. And like, you know, you kind of put on this like,
yeah, it's a little bit of a show. Like you're welcoming people into your home and you're presenting, you always want to put that best foot forward. And if you're, you know, a lot of people, especially moms, it seems it's a big deal how they're presenting their house and their little kingdom.
Yeah, and their family.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like my family was a little bit different in the sense that it was just the three of us for a lot of years. And, we would just kind of stay in our PJs some holidays, and that was like super, super nice. But I remember even thinking, for this Thanksgiving, being over at Rob and Leonore's, just how like relaxed they were and how like calm and like level-headed they were about having people over and like just being like, yeah, like this is their life and this is their house, and just being so like open and welcoming for everyone. And I remember like watching Leonore a little bit, like with Naya, and they have a baby boy as well, and just being like, wow, like she's just really like cool.
Yeah, now that I think back on it, it was a really like low key, but in a good way, in a way that like everyone had food, everyone was taken care of. There's people all kind of scattered about, but no one was kind of stressed about anything and trying to put anything in any timeline or presented in a particular way. That was good. It was nice.
Yeah,
I think thanks to you and to Rob for choosing me as some strange, awkward side member of your family.
Yeah, and you almost were gonna come. And then you're like, oh, I'll come for the vegan mac and cheese. And
That's true.
Like, yeah, you better.
You knew the key to my heart. You were like, oh, just come. There'll be vegan mac and cheese. And I was a little grumpy because sometimes I get grumpy around holidays. It's just I'm a little bit of a Grinch.
Which is a whole other episode.
we could talk about my Grinchy natures in more depth some other time.
But I think, so after Thanksgiving dinner, I had a date. And he had not had Thanksgiving with his family for about 3 years, just because like traveling and different stuff. And he was down in like the international district, like getting Chinese takeout for Thanksgiving, and had like this whole like romanticized version of like, the city during the holidays when like everyone's out of the city, and just how things are like so much slower. And then I was just like, yeah, like no, there are actually like a decent population of people who are spending the holidays alone, and who had spent Thanksgiving alone. And then even with thinking about you and being like, well, how would that make me feel that Kitt's going to possibly spend Thanksgiving alone? And thinking, how would I feel if I was spending my Thanksgiving alone?
How would you feel? What did you kind of come to as you were putting yourself through that little thought experiment? I know for me, like it wasn't a big deal. Like I kind of walked into it like, oh, maybe I'll go somewhere, maybe I won't. And if my expectations aren't kind of preset, and I don't have a lot of like, oh, my family usually does this or this or this, which I don't really have any of that.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, a day, then it's going to be really quiet. And then I was like, I don't have a lot of food. And I walked around a little bit and everywhere is closed. So I would have had to just like find a random Chinese restaurant.
Yep. I think kind of to your point, it really, I think, depends on like what your, schema in your head is of what Thanksgiving looks like, like of what the holidays look like. And if you have that kind of history of like spending it with family and with loved ones, that then it could be really hurtful extra, that you're not. And for me, on one hand, it would have been nice to not like have to do anything for one day. Yeah. But that's kind of what I made my days surrounding the holiday and then the weekend too, of like intentionally shutting myself off to get that disconnect a little bit. But yeah, I think especially as we come up on Christmas a little bit, maybe dig a little bit more into holidays and just kind of family dynamics and the stress that can come with all of that. Because there's a lot there.
We did. And that reminds me of a couple conversations that we had a year ago about like prepping for the holidays and just trying to like get ourselves in a place. 'Cause I know I was going home for the holidays. And there's, that always adds layers because families are often really great triggers.
Yes, absolutely.
Great triggers, meaning it happens. It tends to happen frequently, or it can. There's lots of opportunities for it.
Yeah, and I think overall, holidays is definitely a good discussion around triggers and holidays for sure. I mean, I could literally talk about like feelings and mental health stuff like all day long, but I mean, one thing I really cannot talk about at all is like finances and money. And I honestly have like very little clue what I'm doing in that area. There's so many different like financial blogs and websites out there, but I have no idea who to trust or like what I'm doing. But I recently found On Your Own, which is a personal finance blog that actually provides free and unbiased information that anyone can understand, even me, who's really, really bad at this stuff. But they actually provide really helpful guides and feel like my biggest supporter. Like I feel like they really like got my back. The articles on there are written by personal finance experts from the National Endowment for Financial Education. So the NEFE, the leading nonprofit national foundation, is actually dedicated to inspiring empowered financial decision-making for individuals and families. It covers a wide range of topics, including like how to choose a credit card, how to start investing, and what to do if your identity is stolen, which is terrifying. And hopefully we never have to deal with that. But the blog only links to like reputable resources that you can trust. So all your finance personal questions can be answered on the blog or by one of their resources. And if you guys struggle with this like I do, you can check out onyourown.org/Taylor to learn more. It's a great free resource that will empower you to help make better financial decisions. That's onyourown.org/Taylor. And thank you guys so much for sponsoring the pod and for helping me with all my financial decisions. Again, we're going to leave talking about finances to On Your Own, but we will keep talking about our feelings and mental health. And before we kind of get into some of our letters here, some of our emails from you guys, I do want to share a little bit about something that happened right before Thanksgiving for me, and it actually is kind of related to our first letter, but I sprained my ankle.
You got injured.
Yeah, and I've never been injured before. And
so wait, explain never been injured before. Like you've never broken a bone.
I've never broken a bone. I've never sprained anything. I've never had to be rushed to the hospital for anything. Nothing.
Never had stitches?
I've never had stitches. I've never had a really bad cut. The only thing significant body-wise that I've had happen was my scoliosis surgery.
Yeah.
And I did do an episode on that a while back. You're bent, not broken, something.
But that was how long ago?
I was 12.
12, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that's ever happened. I'm very cautious.
Yeah.
I'm very, very cautious.
You say that with this smile on your face, you're just really proud of the fact that you are so cautious. You would, someone could sell you some really great life insurance because you could just get a great program.
But I also do some risky things. I rollerblade with no knee pads, no shoulder pads, no helmet. That's not very smart.
True.
I remember being in Baltimore. I'd walk around, when we go out to the bars and stuff, and it's cobblestone. It's old cobblestone. And I'd be in heels. That wasn't very smart.
So you can walk around.
I can run in heels very well.
You can literally run around in heels on old cobblestone streets, but just, stairs can be an issue. Is that what we're discovering? Just a regular old set of stairs?
This was with Vanessa. I don't think we really talked about it on my episode with her, but we were walking down steps. They were half steps. Mm. And I was wearing these chunky heel boots, and I didn't fall over, but I just kind of stumbled and my ankle twisted really bad. Oh, and then the next day I couldn't walk, and that was very intense. And so I'm better now than I was for sure. I'm walking like a normal person, but I definitely still have a little bit of pain.
Walking like a normal person might be a stretch. You're walking.
I'm walking with a bit of a gangsta limp.
Yeah, but you're not fully on crutches like you were.
Yeah, I'm not fully on crutches.
On and off the last few days, so that's good.
Yeah. And so we got a letter a while back, and I wanted to do more of an episode on it, but because it kind of related to my recent journey. I thought it was a good letter to bring up. So this person wrote in and said, I had a topic suggestion for you, and that is depression as a result of head injury. I recently suffered a concussion, and even though previously I had been a very happy person and I would consider mentally healthy person, after this I could not stop crying. I had a hard time getting out of bed in the mornings. Every time I thought about my concussion, I would cry for hours. I didn't want to do anything or see any of my friends. It was a really hard time for me, but after my concussion symptoms started clearing up, I felt better. So what are your thoughts on this letter? And I'll share mine.
Well, broadly speaking, my thoughts are that when something like that happens, I think it puts in perspective for us how interconnected we are in so many ways, how what is going on in our physical body affects so much what's going on mentally and emotionally, and in all these kind of internal spaces. Just seeing when one thing happens, or I think it can also be flipped, where something can happen mentally, some kind of trauma, and then we express it in our bodies. We say, oh, something's happening in my body now. I'm getting a breakout, or I'm getting a soreness, or I'm getting something like that. So I think it really does speak to how interconnected all these things are. That's my initial thought.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And I think when something like this comes up where our mental health is being impacted, or we feel like we're not necessarily our normal selves anymore, that it's really easy to kind of start beating yourself up and be like, is this okay? Like, why is this happening? Like, feeling really confused. And again, that's kind of like an important piece of being in therapy, is having someone to kind of like reality check you, of being like, is this a little bit more irrational, or does it make sense? And it's important to validate your experience. And this writer's experience makes a whole lot of sense. Getting injured and having your physical health, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say damaged, but like having your physical health compromised can be really hard to deal with. And I think that this writer's response to it makes a whole lot of sense. And I think while it's hard and you could kind of beat yourself up and feel like, oh, like it's, it's a concussion, like people get these all the time, like I should just be able to like, power through it and like pull myself together. Like, no, that's really scary. Yeah.
There's even probably part of the chemistry of the brain that's even just altered, even for a season.
Yes.
And your whole body and your hormones and everything is just going to be connected to that. And it could even be reminding of an old trauma, something that happened in the past.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of responding to that, but through this current situation. And I think the best thing to do is just give it time and just allow a little bit of disconnect. And like you said, feel those emotions. Don't overly repress them, but then like give yourself a lot of grace, because an injury that seems like it affects one thing and then you realize how it affects everything else often just needs, like, you just got to work through it.
Yeah. And I think, concussions are a very specific kind of head injury. And, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. And if you have a concussion, absolutely consult with your doctor. If you're seeing a therapist, consult with your therapist or your psychiatrist. But certainly that's going to have an impact on your brain, and can definitely impact the way that you're processing emotions. So that might be something to consider. I have never personally had a concussion, but I think that it can just overall be very overwhelming to have some kind of physical ailment compromised. And again, with it being a concussion, definitely like could impact your brain in some way and how you're processing emotions. Definitely, I think could trigger something else to be brought up. But I think important to still surround yourself with friends and with support, and, share that emotion with them, and share that like you're having a really, really hard time with this. Because that's really, really scary. I mean, even just for me being on crutches, I feel like I've gained so much more empathy for people that have had physical injuries. Like, it's not an area of like my mental health I've ever really had to explore aside from my back. And yeah, it definitely takes a toll. Like, I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I was a burden to everyone else around me, like, especially you, Kitt.
Well, we had a fun market experience yesterday.
We had to go to the market to pick up my CSA and...
what I call it market yoga, because I had like a box in one hand and a bag in the other, and I'm just like trying to balance these all through the people.
Yes.
And you're like knocking kids over with your crutches and just...
Kids just don't watch where they're going sometimes. And like when I'm on these crutches, I'm like on a roll. Like I don't know how to slow down.
That was the best thing, is because you and I normally we're fast walkers. You get us, we're gonna cruise. You were outpacing me with the crutches. And I was like, girl, slow down. Like I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up.
I don't know. I don't know how to be injured. It's been an interesting time.
But I liked that you were fairly quickly able to just be like, oh man, I'm experiencing this. And one of the things it's helping me do is, I mean, you said this while we were coming home from the market. You said one of the things that it's helped me do is relate to other people that have had similar things. And like you just said, like the amount of empathy that you can have.
Yes.
And the amount of, like you even assessed some of the things you said years ago to someone that was in a similar situation.
Yeah, I like dated someone a little bit like on and off for like 3-ish years. And he was in crutches and like tore his Achilles and like had to get surgery, all this stuff. And I remember I was like looking back and I was like, damn, that must have been terrible. Like I was present for part of it, not all of it, but I was like, damn, like I was probably like such a little bitch about that too. Like wanting him to like go on hikes with me and like just not even understanding.
Just man up. Come on.
I mean, like they're my kind of hikes. So it was like a trail walk, but of like not being totally understanding. And again, that takes me back to like our consent episode where it was like looking back, you know, there have definitely been times where I haven't fully accepted someone's response as being their response and wanting to like influence it and be like, well, no, like, I know you say you don't want to go on a trail walk, but like, we'll be safe. Like, it'll be fine. Like, I really want to go. Like, and I really want to share this experience with you. Like, we should really do it. Like, I promise you'll be okay. When it's like, I know.
Giving you like a doctor's assessment and be like, I checked it out. You're going to be fine.
But instead of being like, let's take a step back here. And like, that was his answer. He wants to be safe and protect his ankle, you know, so he can work and do all this stuff. And, you know, that's okay. And so, yeah, I was like looking back on like moments like that where I was like, damn, I'd be pissed if someone was doing that to me right now. And like, I'm already trying to, you know, balance just like my identity as someone with a sprained ankle and like having to be on crutches. He was on these for months. And I was just like, the amount of empathy that was generated in me over the last week and a half has been substantial, to say the least.
And that may even be just a good perspective to bring into a lot of these similar kind of situations, including this one we have a letter about, that like somewhere in the back of our brain we can keep in mind that big picture. What this is going to do is give us a lot of space to then interact with other people from, and often giving them that empathy and being like, I don't know exactly what you've been through, but I've been through something close enough to know that the best thing I can do is give you grace and give you non-judgment.
Yes.
Because I've been just close enough to know that if I wasn't getting grace and I was getting judged, that it would have made this thing much, much, much worse.
Yes.
Much worse.
Yeah.
But I think a good way to come out of it. Like it's going to give you a perspective that you didn't have, and it give you a way of relating and interacting with other people.
Yeah. I mean, every life experience, you know, like even the struggle, even like the hard times, like it's like, oh, you're still going to get something out of this in the end. And if nothing else, at least it's empathy for someone else who's maybe been through something like that you didn't understand before.
Yeah.
So I want to take a quick break before we go into this next letter to share with you guys one of my favorite sponsors of the pod. I'm big on dental hygiene and especially the sonic toothbrushes. And Burst Oral Care is actually the first toothbrush head specifically designed for sonic vibrations and has the most powerful motor on the market. And like that to me is so important. Like I would never use just a regular toothbrush. And they actually have a new limited rose gold edition brush that comes with a beautiful matching travel case that I love. And it gives you an automatic membership to the Burst subscription replacement program that actually sends you a new brush head every 3 months. So you don't forget for just $7 each. And it's priced at $99.99. You guys can just go to burstoralcare.com to get your limited rose gold Burst sonic toothbrush and use my code Taylor at checkout to get 10% off your order. That's burstoralcare.com with code Taylor for 10% off. Don't miss out on this special offer, guys. Go to burstoralcare.com today and don't forget to enter my code Taylor for 10% off the new rose gold toothbrush. So fancy. But I want to go to our next letter.
Okay.
And our next letter is a little bit more about relationships. So we're going to get into a little bit of jealousy. So this letter reads, she says, I've been in a number of relationships where I was accused of being insecure due to concern about my boyfriend and one of his girlfriends. It always seemed like there was something more between them and that I was second best, but I've never had any proof of any infidelity. Have you had to deal with this at all? And if so, is it justified or am I really just being too, quote, insecure?
What are your broad thoughts on just like jealousy as an emotion or as a kind of mental state?
I have a few. I think, actually I would really love for us to do an episode discussing open relationships as a side note. But I think jealousy is a emotion that can be used in like some beneficial ways, but also can be like quite damaging to relationships. Let's look up like the actual dictionary definition of jealousy real quick. But I will also say in this, she says, it always seemed like there was something more between them, but she's never had any proof. First, I kind of want to say, trust your gut. Like, don't forget to listen to your gut. There's so many things like looking back in relationships where I'm like, my gut knew. Like I knew right then and there. And I didn't feel like I had the courage or I didn't feel like I had the evidence, to say anything to make it valid. But there's something like really, really special there about listening to your gut when you have a strong feeling about something. Do we have this jealousy definition, Kit?
So there's a couple. I mean, jealousy is the definition of jealous is feeling or showing envy of someone or their achievements and advantages.
And envy is a whole other. Envy is like a double jealous. Envy is like wanting to actually be in that person's shoes, right?
Yes. Okay. This cut off the end of the next definition, which is feeling or showing suspicion of someone's unfaithfulness in a relationship.
Oh, that's very specific. Okay.
Very specific. And then actually the next one, this is actually really, really good. Fiercely protective or vigilant of one's rights or possessions.
Ooh.
And when applied to relationships, I think there can sometimes be this, even in the terminology that we use, this sense of ownership that we feel or perceive towards our significul other.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about open relationships.
Oh man, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Because we'll even use words like, she's mine. And even my girlfriend or my boyfriend.
Yeah.
And we have this sense of
possession.
Yeah, of possession. And when that feels threatened because it feels like it's ours, then I think that's where that arises. But so what does that specific or the more specific definitions of jealousy? How is that?
I think it's interesting that the one goes like directly to relationships. But yeah, I think it is like this suspicion that comes about. And that's kind of what this writer's, writing about, is feeling this suspicion towards one of her boyfriend's girlfriends, and without having the proof of it, of not really knowing what to do, if it's justified or if she's just being too insecure. And I think that even that notion of being like, am I being too insecure, is kind of a little, can be like a negative thing, can be like a belittling thing. Like, am I just being too insecure, And like, I think that's okay to feel insecure sometimes, but to ask yourself why, because my question to this writer would be like, are there other areas of your relationship where you feel insecure? And is this relationship with one of his girlfriends a projection of that?
And is it a trend that you see across multiple relationships? Because if it's multiple people and you find yourself having the same kind of emotional reaction to their interactions, then it's quite possible that you're a huge factor in that, that some insecurity is a thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to if it was just
This
an
one
isolated
specific
event and you're like, okay, that person and their interaction makes me feel uncomfortable, which may just mean that that's an opportunity to have a discussion. But I don't know. Overall, I just feel like jealousy as an emotional reaction to something is really, really telling of our internal state. And I think a lot of times when it expresses this, when it feels like the emotion of jealousy, I think a lot of times it is a projection onto another person, and it is a source of, at least that's what it's been for me.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say,
coming from a source of insecurity.
I'll say when I look at the beginning of this person's letter again, she notes that she's been in a number of relationships where she was accused of being insecure. So that's where I would kind of say there seems to be a pattern with this, and that to really kind of take a step back and look at, why this is coming up for you. Because like you said, I totally agree. I think that the jealousy can be a projection of something we're insecure about, or something that we haven't fully dealt with, some feeling of insecure, whether it's like with attachment to that relationship or just fulfillment in yourself, and feeling like something's going to be taken away from you, feeling like that relationship is going to like be taken away, or that they're going to leave you, and like what that's bringing up for you.
Right.
Especially if there is a pattern of it, then if there's a pattern of it and there's no proof of it, if you've talked about it and, it seems like nothing is coming up, then 100%, I would say take a step back and do some, inner reflection on that. And even as we talk about this, you had brought up a quote the other day that I'm reminded of. I don't fully remember what it is, so you'll have to remind me. But this knowing this pattern and kind of looking up to see where our emotions come from. We talked about it the other day.
Yeah,
what was
I showed
it?
you this the other day. It says, it's by someone that I saw it on Instagram. They're just it just says YP. I'm not sure exactly who said this. So if you know who exactly said this, let us know. But they said, many of our emotional reactions don't fully have to do with what is currently going on. They're actually old emotions that have been accumulated from the past, patterns that arise when familiar situations appear.
Ooh.
Like some kind of repressed emotion or something happened that did trigger something really specific. And then it's not that the same thing is happening, but it's something that reminds us close enough to that it just touches on it.
Can we reread that one more time just so it really sits in?
Many of our emotional reactions don't fully have to do with what is currently going on. They are actually old emotions that have been accumulated from the past, patterns that arise when familiar situations appear.
So good.
Patterns that arise, yeah. So,
like, especially with this writer, this is a pattern of you being accused of being insecure out of this jealousy and concern that you've had for your boyfriend's friends. And yeah, that's might not actually really have anything to do with your boyfriend's friends, but that this could be accumulated from the past. And this is a pattern that's just starting to appear when this similar situation comes up.
Like it may not even be a specific insecurity. Like we may be labeling it as, or thinking of it as, oh, am I insecure because of this? But it could be just triggering something from way back that, you know, doesn't really have a lot to do with your sense of security, but it has to do with a different event that happened, that there's still some emotional residue that hasn't been expressed and hasn't found an outlet. And I think that that quote I think can say something to our writer that had the injury. Yeah. Because there could be some things that like...
It could have just triggered something that hasn't been dealt with yet.
Like she said, she thinks about the concussion and that makes her cry. But like the actual concussion may not be the thing that you're actually... that's actually invoking the emotion. Yeah. It's just that crack that gives it an opportunity to express.
That's what I always say. I say, like, if I'm having a really stressful week and it feels like things just keep building up and I, like, haven't had the time or haven't made the time, I need to clarify that because we do have the time. We just need to make the time to deal with my emotions that then, like, the smallest thing will happen, like I stub my toe, and then I'm, like, bawling my eyes out after I stub my toe. And it's like that reaction is so not justified for that particular situation. Like, it hurt, but it didn't hurt that bad. It was just it triggered all these other things to come up. So it's so ridiculous.
But that's good. It's good to recognize. It's good to recognize that, like, okay, no, there's emotions that, and not devalue the emotion because, like, I think the emotion does need a place to be expressed and not repressed, but also disconnect that emotion directly from the thing that invoked it. Like the stubbing of the toe, like, okay, calm down. Yeah.
I have another example of that, actually, that's maybe a little bit more specific and emotional. Shortly after my relationship with Derek ended, I was traveling, and, you know, throughout that relationship, I was traveling a lot. So it was long distance, and I remember, where was I? I think I was in LA. I was leaving Seattle, going to LA, and I was in the airport and just had, like, so much anxiety. And I remember, like, I called Vanessa and I was in the bathroom and I was just, like, bawling my eyes out. And I was like, it was a stressful flight and, like, just stressed out about being at the airport and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, these airport, like, just pissing me off. And she's like, Taylor, like, you fly all the time. And I was like, yeah, but, like, whoa, this is the first time I've traveled and, like, haven't been going, like, to New York to see Derek. Right. And then, oh, shit, actually, no, I think it was actually when I went to GMA. It was going to New York, actually. New York,
but going to New York in a very different context.
For a very different reason, yeah. But I thought that it was just the airport and, like, the struggle of travel and everything that was, like, stimulating this reaction for me and all this anxiety. But really, it was just the trigger to, like, all these emotions that I had felt over the last year of traveling, like, and going to someone. So it was, like, very interesting to reflect on, where it was like, yeah, this isn't actually about the airport. It's about all the emotions I've had with traveling and with that relationship.
So that could be a factor in jealousy as well.
Yeah.
And in this situation. So there's a lot of ways to look at it to try to figure out what is really going on and what the best way to kind of navigate that. But man.
Just always ask yourself why. Why? Like, I feel this way. Why? And again, kind of talking about some emotions. Our last letter here that we'll go over is asking about irrational fears. This person says, how do I work through an irrational fear? This past summer, I developed a fear of heat. My fears are around having a heat stroke, heat exhaustion, etc. I used to tolerate being outdoors in the summer heat, even exercising in it. But this past summer, it kept me indoors a lot because I had a lot of incidents where I felt too hot and out of it, and it scared me. How do I work through this fear? So first, again, like, reality checking yourself. to what extent is this reasonable? If you kind of had some scares, that makes sense that you'd start to be a little bit scared. But then to what extent you take that to completely avoiding the outdoors, where this starts to become a really serious fear, could be something to really look at. And one thing I always want to encourage people to do, obviously, is to seek help with a professional counselor. And there's so many different ways you can do that. And I know sometimes people feel like they don't have the time to actually go in and see a therapist, but there is a really great resource called BetterHelp, where you can actually connect with a professional counselor in a safe and private online environment where anything that you share is confidential and it's super convenient. You can actually get help on your own time, at your own pace. You can schedule secure video and phone sessions, and you can chat and text with your therapist. And if you're not happy with that person, you can always just request a new one at any time with no additional charge. And honestly, best part of all of this is that for all of you Let's Talk About It listeners, you can actually get 10% off your first month with the discount code Talk About It. I mean, all of you writing us in letters, what are you waiting for? You can literally start this today and go to betterhelp.com/talkaboutit. You just simply fill out a questionnaire to help them access your needs, and then you get matched with a counselor, and you can start communicating in under 24 hours. So again, if you guys want to check that out, you can go to betterhelp.com/talkaboutit. But I think it's always super important to take that step, to reach out to someone, to reality check yourself, to, just share what you're actually feeling and open up about that. You might be a little bit scared of oh, I think I have this rational fear of going out in the heat, but heat can also be really scary. Right.
Often irrational fear is based in some kind of rational fear. And so I'm in this situation, I'm curious if there was an incident where maybe they were overheated, or they were in a confined space and something got hot, and some inner part of their psyche got scared and got threatened.
Yeah.
And then anytime something kind of similar happens, I think very, very similar to what we were talking about before with the emotion sometimes being just an expression of something from the past. Something happens that just reminds us on some deep psychological level.
Yeah.
And then we go, oh, this is something that I should avoid. And on one hand, I think fear is an incredibly powerful thing that we can use because it's trying to keep us safe. And we talked a lot about, remember early on, we had that whole conversation about in the car, who's driving.
Yeah.
How to give and who to give voice to. And how to hear that fear without always responding to it directly.
Yeah.
So I think in this kind of situation, I think part of the fear is maybe a little irrational because it's it's changing some of their day-to-day behaviors.
Yeah.
But I think maybe some of it is based in some kind of rational place, and I think it might be really interesting to try to break that down.
Yeah.
And see where this starts. Maybe go to betterhelp.com/talkaboutit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Which I should probably do.
Yeah. It's always scary to take that first step, especially when you're already kind of aware of something. And with this writer and the other two writers that we've answered so far, of realizing that there might be something wrong, and then actually taking that step to be oh shit, now am I gonna really go deal with this now?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
And that can be really scary. But again, I think when you're open and you share with at least one person in your life, that you have that support and you have that encouragement, that can really make all the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have one last letter to kind of go over. Kit, you want to take it away with that one?
Yeah. This one is addressed specifically to Taylor. She says, "Hi, Taylor. I hope you're doing well." How very sweet.
Doing well.
I was wondering if you have any advice or tips to young people who would like to become therapists someday. I've always wanted to help people, and I always enjoy listening to what people have to say. I will be starting college this August, and am so excited to start the steps to become a great therapist. Thank you.
Well, that sounds wonderful. First, congrats to, starting college I guess you would have just recently started because it's now November.
Oh, yeah.
So a little late to getting to your letter. Apologies. But I do get this question a lot, like all the time, especially from other people entering into even their graduate programs. Some people that are at Hopkins in the same program I was in, asking, how I like the program and just advice for people becoming therapists. And always my biggest tip is self-care. I think we go into this field wanting to help other people, but can very quickly forget to help ourselves. And Brene Brown put it so wonderfully that we like to categorize ourselves as people who help and people who need help, but the reality is that we're both.
And all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're always in a place where it's like, I have something to give, but in order to have something to give, we also need to have people in our life with which we have a relationship that we can receive from as well.
Yeah. And counselor burnout is a very, very real thing. And especially in community mental health, like the turnover rates with employees can be super intense. But I think starting off, Whoa, it's literally almost been a year since that too. I did a speech with Active Minds, which has chapters in universities all throughout the U.S. So definitely if you are going into college and you're interested in psychology, or if you are not at all interested in psychology or entering a program related to it, but you're going to college, totally check out Active Minds and get involved in their programs. They actually have had research studies done on their organization and how it's impacted college campuses throughout the U.S. and that there's actual evidential proof, that they are helping reduce the number of suicides in college campuses and just creating a safe environment for students to, discuss their mental health and get access to help. So they are super awesome. But yeah, I did a speech with them last year in November. And we kind of recapped a little bit of that in a very, very early episode of Let's Talk About It. And a lot of what I talked about in that speech, which is also actually on YouTube, was not judging yourself as a young counselor, of giving yourself some grace and being compassionate with yourself that, I think there's so many areas that people can judge you up against of you're so young, you just got out of college. What kind of real experience do you even have? You can't really help anyone. All those ridiculous things that people say. And remaining confident in your ability to help people. I know that's something that I struggled with, especially after the show, was all these people that have never worked with me and have never met me want to say that I can't be a good therapist, but you have to remain confident in knowing your skills and knowing how you perform with clients and the rapport that you build, and to just really kind of go at it as human to human. You'll, entering your program, you'll learn all about what approach works best for you. But for me, I think the best rapport that I've developed with clients has been because I look at it as this is a human to human relationship. Yeah. And yes, there is that power differential, but at the same time, I'm treating this relationship as human to human.
And less expert and minion or something like that. There's this huge extreme of someone that's supposed to know all the answers and someone that's completely messed up. And it's not. We're both meeting in the middle all the time.
Exactly. And they're going to learn things from me and I will always learn something from them.
Yeah.
And that for me, it's it's in some ways it is a two-way street, Certainly you have those boundaries and all of that. But don't forget to learn from your clients is kind of what I would say. And don't forget to take care of yourself, because that is so, so, so important.
Yeah. Well, good for her though, for having, recognizing the abilities that she does have already instinctively and
for even just pursuing it in the first place.
Yeah. Because it's needed. And I think more and more people, like just in regular conversation, it's just becoming way more normal for people to accept some kind of therapy as a normal part of just us all being human together. And so good for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and hopefully we're doing some of that work here, making it easier to talk about.
Making it easier. Yeah.
I think another episode we could probably do is just like talking about therapy in dating. That's always like one of the first questions I ask. At least within the first date, it's brought up of like, have you ever been in therapy?
Oh, really?
And I always even just gauge like the guy's reaction to even just me asking,
right?
And what their response is. It's interesting.
Do you? So you feel like you're able to learn a lot from them, because if they're like, no way, I would never, or if they almost even feel offended of it, versus someone that's like, oh man, I did, and I am, and I did it for these reasons, and this is what I'm working on, whatever.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah, it's interesting, because to me, I just look at it as like, this is how I'm learning about you, and learning about how you handle life. Really, it's a way.
We have our ways of doing it. We all have our own ways.
Yeah. But yeah, again, we could keep going on and on and on. And this is what happens when, we start off an episode with not much direction. Just answer a few of your questions, read some of what you guys are dealing with in your life. And then here we are, like a little over 15 minutes later. And I could keep going for like another 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got a bunch of other letters that would spark interesting conversations. But no, it's great to read these and kind of get some of the thoughts of the various listeners.
Yeah. And again, like super love hearing from you guys, whether it's like a iTunes review or even just an email. I do want to give a little reminder as we wrap up today, that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to rest. It's okay to like let go of things that are no longer serving you in your life. And it's really okay to not be okay. And to give yourself space for that, judgment-free. And going into the holidays, I think we'll definitely have another episode kind of around that topic. And if not, then I'll definitely be talking about it on my Instagram.
Yeah. It's
important.
It's going to need to be part of conversation just to get us all through it. But it'll be good.
For sure.
We're going to learn a lot this year.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. Happy 1 year anniversary of podcast, I guess.
No, it's awesome. It's good. I'm glad I kind of accidentally ended up on this one. It's a good one
now after this, I'm literally going to go back and look at exact date and try to figure it out. But thank you guys all for listening and being a part of all of this. I'm really glad that it helps and that it resonates with some of you, and wouldn't want to be doing it if that weren't the case. So again, let me know what you guys want us to cover and what you want us to talk about and things that you want to see happen. I would love to do a live podcast here in Seattle, so potentially get that rolling. But again, you can email us at ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com, and you can find Kitt Bender on Insta at KITTBNDR, Kitt Bender. And you can find me at Tamoka. But thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Babes and Babies, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.